That day, the sky was shrouded in heavy gray clouds looming over the winding river. A barely perceptible breeze cut through the frozen silence along its banks. On the damp, icy sand prowled a large female cheetah. Her spotted coat all but merged with the drab autumn hues of the forest, and piercing cries, echoing in the stillness, escaped her mouth, filled with helpless despair. Her golden eyes were fixed on the water where her cub struggled desperately against the powerful current. The little cheetah cub, barely managing to stay afloat, paddled its limbs in vain, its wet fur clinging to its frail body. Its eyes, the same amber hue as its mother's, widened with fear, reflecting the hopelessness of its predicament. The swift current was carrying it ever farther away, while the mother, clawing at the riverbank, couldn't make up her mind to leap in too deep, too strong a flow. At that moment, a man appeared along the shore at a quick pace. This was Mark, a young traveler in a worn waterproof jacket. He saw what was happening and dropped his backpack without hesitation. His heart pounded wildly, but there was no time to hesitate. He plunged into the icy water fully dressed, boots and all. The cold wrapped Mark like a wall of ice, yet he pressed on, pushing through the swirling currents toward the small cheetah, now just a faint spot on the surface. In a hushed tone, he muttered, "Hang in there, little guy," even though he knew the cub wouldn't understand his words. As he got closer, Mark felt the slippery fur and carefully grasped the tiny creature, trying not to harm its delicate bones. Then a powerful whirl of the current seized them both, carrying them downstream. Water surged over Mark's head, making it impossible to breathe. He felt his strength draining fast, and the cub was almost motionless, whether from exhaustion or because it was half strangled by the water's relentless grip. Summoning his resolve, Mark paddled with all his might, struggling toward the bank. Battling the current felt unending. Every breath came with difficulty, and his muscles ached as if filled with lead. But at last, a muddy shallows appeared up ahead. Mark continued to fight the freezing water, which seemed to pull him back into the depths. Finally, he scrambled onto the wet ground, breathing heavily, clutching the cub to his chest. For a moment, it seemed the little one showed no signs of life, and terror seized Mark's heart. But then the tiny cheetah gave a ragged gasp and let out a low whimper, spitting out water. Relief surged within Mark. A sharp growl behind him made him start. Only a few steps away stood the mother cheetah. The fur on her neck stood on end, her muscles tensed. She was ready to defend her offspring at all costs. Mark gently set the cub on the ground and raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. The cheetah froze as if deciding whether to trust this strange creature. Her gaze darted from Mark to her cub and back again. Then she slowly moved closer. A low, deep growl blended with the roar of the river and the thudding of Mark's heart. Crouching beside the cub, she began to lick its wet fur, soothing it. The little one let out a pitiful squeak, trying to lift itself. Then the mother turned her head toward the man. There was no more fury in her golden eyes. Instead, they held a curious blend of caution and gratitude. After this moment of contact, she gave a low, muted sound as if trying to express her thanks. Mark swallowed, feeling tears rise. He could hardly believe what had just happened. He had saved the cheetah cub from certain death, and the mother understood. Days passed, yet the memory of the incident would not leave Mark. Over and over he recalled that moment, the rushing river, the tiny cheetah clutched in his arms, the mother's despair and gentleness in her gaze. One morning he returned to the river to fish and clear his head. Sunlight danced on the water, turning it into a golden ribbon. Everything was quiet until he heard a faint rustle in the undergrowth. Turning, he saw those same cheetahs. The mother moved with graceful fluidity, her coat now dry and smooth, gleaming in the gentle morning light. Beside her bounded the cub, now lively, hardly reminiscent of the little creature that had nearly drowned. Joy lit up Mark's face. He hesitated to move for fear of frightening them away. But the mother cheetah understood. Both knew a bond had formed between them, forged by rescue and trust. For a moment, she drew nearer and Mark's heart pounded even harder. Suddenly, she dropped something into his fishing basket, a freshly caught rabbit. In the wild, this was a priceless gift, a genuine gesture of appreciation. Mark's fingers trembled as he touched the rim of the basket. In response, he only nodded silently, unwilling to break the solemnity of the moment with words. The cheetah lingered a moment more, as if assessing his reaction, then turned and disappeared into the foliage with her playful cub. Months went by, one season blending into the next. Mark returned to the river many times, scanning the banks, but found no trace of the cheetahs. Yet deep down, he knew they had shared something profound that day, a fleeting, powerful link between man and wild animal, a spark of mutual trust ignited amid the unforgiving forces of nature. He needed no further proof. Once he had saved a life from the icy waters, and that life had rewarded him in the most extraordinary way. Even if their paths never crossed again, the memory of those golden eyes and the gift left in his basket would remain in Mark's heart for all his days.